Hello and welcome to Beyond the Knife, a medical history podcast brought to you by Surgeons Hall, Museums, Library and Archives. We are part of the Royal College of Surgeons of Edinburgh. I am Chanté, Director of Heritage and Estates at the college. Each episode, I'm joined by a guest who shares a story from the history of medicine and surgery. This episode contains discussions on topics that some people may find distressing. Please take care while listening. Few conditions have followed humanity as persistently as gonorrhea. Older than the Bible and still circulating today, it has been misunderstood, moralized over, and misnamed. In this episode, we're joined by anatomist and human remains conservator Cat Irving to trace its long history through the bodies and lives it marked, from its symptoms to its treatments, to consider what the stories told about it reveal about medicine, society, and all the people caught in between. Cat, welcome back to the podcast.
Hello, it's lovely to be here again.
And today we are talking about gonorrhea.
Yes, we are. Another sexually transmitted disease.
Because we have, of course, spoken about syphilis.
Yes.
Okay, so we're going to talk about gonorrhea. And just to bring us into this, I understand out of the two, syphilis or gonorrhea, I'd want that instead.
Syphilis has much more dramatic effects. That's not to say gonorrhea is nice, and we'll definitely get to that.
Okay, so tell us what gonorrhea is. It is also a bacteria.
It's also a bacteria, Neisseria gonorrhoeae, and it's predominantly sexually transmitted, as we've said. Not entirely, there are other ways, and again, we'll mention that a bit later, but it's thought of as a sexually transmitted infection. It has terrible effects, but you don't have holes in your face like you do with syphilis.
Okay, so out of the two,
better off, but that's not the same as you want it, really.
Tell us about gonorrhea, Kat.
So if you get gonorrhea, the primary symptoms you're going to get are pain while you pee and pus, discharge coming out.
Okay, and that's coming out of my penis, my vagina?
Indeed.
Okay.
Yeah, whichever you have. It tends to be more dramatic in the penis. And again, we can talk about this later. People tend to talk about it in men. It was something that you would get lots and lots of discharge. It would cause lots of problems. And eventually with men, it might actually stop them peeing full stop.
Well, that does not sound like fun.
It's not fun. And it's something that has been with us for a long time. We think that gonorrhea is actually mentioned in the Bible. There is a quote in Leviticus where they say, "And the gods spake unto Moses and to Aaron, saying, Speak to the children of Israel, and say unto them, When any man hath a running issue out of his flesh, because of his issue he is unclean." And that running issue is thought to be the discharge that you get when you have gonorrhea.
That's in the Bible. Gonorrhea is old.
That's in the Bible, yeah.
So what do we know the date of when it was first identified?
Well, this is the first time that we've got mentions in the Bible. So obviously that's been around for a while. Galen is, around the 1st century CE. He gives us the name gonorrhea. And it means flow of semen, or flow of seed. And that's because they thought that stuff coming out was basically an excess of semen. And obviously we know now that that's a sign of the infection, that's pus, but that's how they were thinking of it back then, 2,000 years ago.
Gosh, that's incredible. So Galen gives us the name gonorrhea, but it's also called the clap?
The clap. There are various theories why it gets called the clap. Probably the most likely one is that it comes from le clapier, and this is from medieval brothels. So where the sex workers were working from were these tiny little huts, and they got known as the rabbit holes. So the idea was that you went there and you came back with the clap. There are other theories, of course. Some people think that pain that you get, the burning sensation when you pee, that it was so immediate that it was like having a clap. And then there's another theory where effectively, because you had this pus coming out of your penis, they thought that one of the ways that you should treat that is basically by getting it out. And so one of the ways they tried to do it was basically getting a book, putting the penis inside of it, clapping it shut, and that would squeeze everything out. So that was one idea of where this name, the clap, comes from.
I don't have a penis and I just squirm.
Yeah. When you talk about this in front of an audience, you can see the legs crossing.
The theory was if you removed the pus, that would cure?
Yeah, that if you were getting it out, then that was the same as making it better effectively.
Which we know is not correct.
It's not. It's not getting rid of the underlying bacteria that's in there.
Any other names?
Well, it is sometimes known as gleats. Gleats would refer to both the discharge itself and sometimes to the condition. So you get books like there's one by John Andre called Practical Observations on the Treatment of Gleats. And then another one from 1858, Gleats, Its Pathology and Treatment by Henry Dick, who was a surgeon to the private hospital for syphilis on Portland Road.
Amazing. So there is obviously this burning, there is pus that's forming. What does it do? What impact does it have on the body?
Well, I mean, that doesn't sound nice, but you kind of think about what we talked about with syphilis. It could be worse, but it can cause problems underneath. So if you imagine that in the penis, in the man, you have a structure called the urethra, which runs through it, which is what you pee through. And if you're getting repeated infection, or chronic infection in that, it can cause that to narrow, and then you can't pee properly. And that can either just be reducing the quantity of urine that's coming out, or in severe cases, it can stop it entirely. And this is when we start to see examples of gonorrhea in Surgeons' Hall collection.
Tell us more.
So I know you've seen this, Chanté, that we have several shelves of penises with what's known as stricture of the urethra, which were collected by a man called Charles Bell, who's very well known for his paintings that we have here in the museum. But he also wrote widely on a number of subjects, including a treatise on the diseases of the urethra, vesica, that's the bladder, the prostate and the rectum, that he published in 1820. And so this collection of penises is part of the research that he was doing into this condition. So it was something he was looking at widely because it was a major problem. And so we have a number of examples of the types of issue that this could cause. So the pus may seem unpleasant but not serious, but we have one man who saw Charles Bell on a Sunday night. It was midnight when he saw Charles Bell. He'd already been to see his local doctor who had tried to put a catheter up because he hadn't been able to pee for quite some time. It wasn't working. And Charles Bell examines him and he takes a history and he asks the man if he's had gonorrhea and he says no. Because obviously there is a stigma attached to sexually transmitted diseases. But a bit of probing, in both senses of the word, and Charles Bell establishes that actually in the past 20 years he's had gonorrhea 3 times. And this is what's caused this problem with him being able to pee, because he's got a major stricture in his urethra. And Charles Bell is looking at his abdomen and he can actually feel his bladder above the level of his belly button. So just imagine that. The serious issue there is that it could rupture. And that's inevitably going to be fatal. Charles Bell goes in through the rectum so that he can relieve the urine from the bladder that way. So obviously we can see that while, this might not sound as serious as syphilis does in a lot of ways, this can cause major, major, major problems.
Does he relieve it successfully?
He does in the first instance, and the man is fine for a number of days. But again, this is the early 19th century. There is no antisepsis. This is an area that's not the cleanest anyway if you're going through the rectum. And if you get infection, there's no antibiotics. So the man eventually will die of infection from the treatment. But certainly without that, death would have been much more immediate.
So the collection that we're talking about as well, the reason why it stands out so much is the way that these penises have been prepared. So Charles Bell was very specific about the kind of preparation techniques he uses, the bristles he uses to identify where the issues are in the penis and the urethra too.
Yeah, he's wanting to use this for illustrating his textbooks, but also to be able to, he's a teacher. He teaches at the Great Windmill Street Anatomy School down in London. So he's wanting to make sure that the students know what they're seeing. So he uses these little bristles, so they're black, and he inserts them into the point where the strictures are and shows why the urine can't go through. So they're very, very good at actually showing you what's wrong, where, to the untrained eye, you might just look at it and go, well, what's actually happening here?
What else do we see in the collection?
Well, really, because gonorrhea doesn't cause that same issue, in the rest of the body like syphilis does, it's not really causing, as I say, these big holes in the skull. We tend to, in our collection, only really have it for the penis. We do have some examples where it leads to gangrene of the penis. So we've got some casts which are showing that the penis has become gangrenous because of the infection that's been caused by this. And sometimes we have issues with the kidneys because the urine is being backed up.
That's awful.
It is.
Yeah, that's not. Nobody's having fun there.
No one is enjoying this at all.
Gosh, okay. So, Kat, just on that comparison with syphilis as well, I think there's been some pretty wild experiments.
Yes, there was a point, particularly in the 18th century, where they actually thought syphilis and gonorrhea were the same thing. There were arguments on both sides, that they're the same disease, that they're different diseases. And so there was actually an experiment to try and prove this. John Hunter, he believed that effectively it was the same cause, but it was where you were exposed to the disease that made it different. So if the exposure to the disease was on skin, then you would get syphilis. But if it was on a mucous membrane, you would get the pussy reaction of gonorrhea. So he got somebody who had a sore, a venereal disease sore, and he took some pus from that. And then he inoculated a penis both on the sort of mucous membranes of the glands of the penis and then on the shaft. And his theory was that you would get both syphilis and gonorrhea. And the person did get both syphilis and gonorrhea, and he thought that proved that they were the same thing. Now, the chances are it was just somebody who had both diseases that he had taken this initial pus from. But of course, the question is, whose penis was it? Who was he allowing this experiment to be done?
Whose penis was it, Cat?
Well, we don't know. This is a really good question. It's never actually been established who was it, whether this was somebody that John Hunter had managed to rope in, or whether he'd done it on himself.
Right, because I feel that's what I was thinking. I thought that he did it on himself. But that is rumor.
It's rumor. We don't actually know. Some people have taken the fact that he died of something that looked like it could be syphilitic aortitis, that might be proof that this happened, but it's a theory. We don't know. And from this distance in time, there's no way we're ever going to know.
So John Hunter was living
in the 18th century.
In the 18th century. So I guess there is that shame, much like syphilis, like you've already referred to as well.
Absolutely.
So it is entirely possible that he had gonorrhea and syphilis?
Well, just because if he did have them, it doesn't mean to say that he got them from that experiment. There is always that as well. And of course, now we have microscopes. We have since been able to establish that there are different diseases caused by different bacteria.
So what about treatments, Kat, apart from clapping the penis in a book?
Well, there are certainly other treatments. Whether or not you would say they're better remains to be seen. But effectively, what they were trying to do with the treatments was to open up the stricture. So if you had a stricture and you couldn't pee, they were trying to get something up there effectively to unblock it.
Okay.
And so one of the earliest things that was being used for this was something that was known as a bougie. And initially it was effectively, like a candle taper, very thin string that or horsehair, something like that had been dipped in wax. So you got a very long, narrow, flexible rod that you could insert up there.
I mean, I'm braced. This is not sounding better. You're right.
It's not. And again, depending on how much wax you had, you could make that thicker or thinner. So you would start off with the narrowest one, work up. And it was called a bougie because of the wax. There was a town in the north of Algeria, which was called Bougie by the French. They produced the best wax, and so that's what gave this instrument its name. And it came to be made of other things. 19th century bougies were often metal. But one of the things about using wax is that you could sometimes do that where you would use fabric, you would use linen, something like that, and coat that in wax, and then you could roll it up to whatever your desired diameter was. And that meant that you had something that not only was thin and flexible, but also you could use that to put something on the end of it that you could effectively deliver up the urethra. And usually what is referred to is caustic. And I'm sure you're going to say that doesn't sound like...
No, I mean, my face is in my hands. Everything is horror.
Yeah. So caustic, it could be verdigris, alum, vitriol, so that's sulfuric acid, or silver nitrate, lunar caustic. And this was often the most common thing that was used. So, and you can still go on eBay today and buy silver nitrate in stick form that you can use for, treating warts or something like that.
I had no idea where that sentence was going for a moment. I'm glad it was there.
The things that the research for stuff like this does to my algorithm is insane. It was something that would burn away the blockage in your urethra.
Is it working?
Well, it works. You will get through that and it will allow the person to pee. But what you've got to imagine is that if you're burning something away, you're causing scar tissue.
Yeah.
And so that's likely to then cause later blockages.
Because I do remember one of the causes of stricture, penis stricture, that we've talked about is scar tissue.
Yes. So again, it's going to exacerbate the problem in the long term. And it can also sometimes cause another problem. which most of the textbooks warn about being very careful about, and that's creating a false passage. So effectively, you're not pushing it through the blockage, but just through the flesh, which again can cause other problems.
Oh, that's awful. So in terms of this treatment, I'm going to my doctor. There are things being inserted up with caustic at the end of it. I mean, the pain must have been extraordinary.
It's going to be truly, truly horrible. And again, you've got to imagine that the reason you're doing that, I mean, it's like when you can't go to the toilet. If you can't do that for a long time, it's not just a case that it's taken you a bit longer to get there. If you just can't go, how desperate people must be to go through this.
And a false passage.
Yeah.
And so that could get infected then?
Absolutely.
Oh, so apart from the bougie and the caustic, the clapping of the book, anything else?
Well, when we get into 1897, we get an actual treatment that can work.
Hurrah!
It's produced by Bayer. It's called Protargal. It still involves silver. It's a silver proteinate, and silver is bactericidal, so it will kill the bacteria. So you can apply this and it will actually treat the infection. So that's good. There is a problem with silver, however. Silver, your body can't get rid of. So if you ingest it into your body, and, if you're getting it through a mucous membrane, that can get into your body somehow, it will stay in your body. And if you repeat this over time, if, for example, you got the Protargal, you were a bit worried that you're getting repeated exposure to gonorrhea, and you just keep applying it, it's going in through the mucous membranes, it builds up in your body. Eventually that can turn you blue.
So how am I applying it?
Well, again, you might use this as a rinse that you're basically washing your penis with, possibly even inserting up, so through into the urethra. So again, if that's going in, if that's getting absorbed through the mucous membranes into the body, this can lead to a silver buildup. This is called agorosis. And over time, that can cause your whole body to turn blue.
Not just the penis.
Not just
whole
the penis,
body.
the whole body.
You become a smurf.
It is sometimes been known as smurf syndrome.
So 1897, people start turning blue.
Blue is only if you have chronic exposure. You use your Argyrol a couple of times, you're absolutely fine. It's just if you're having this as a long-term exposure that the blue is going to come along.
And shades of blue?
It's going to build up. The more exposure you have, the more the silver is going to build up in your body.
The bluer you become.
The bluer you become.
And you're blue forever.
That's it. There's no way that you can get rid of that.
So the turning blue, Cat, I know I'm dwelling on this, but it is kind of extraordinary. It doesn't kill you?
No. It's the silver molecules building up in your body, and they're the things that are causing a colour change, but it is just the colour change.
And it's my skin and my organs?
All the way through your body. We have a kidney in the collection with agorosis, and you can see, it's not a bright blue, but you can see the blue tinge to it.
Incredible. So please tell me we don't have to turn blue today.
We get antibiotics.
Hurrah for antibiotics.
Hurrah for antibiotics. We get antibiotics, and they're very, very effective at treating gonorrhea.
So let's come back to the antibiotics. Let's talk about it first, though, how it presents in women.
Benjamin Bell, one of the people that we mention a lot in our museum, he wrote a treatise on gonorrhea virulenta and lues venerea, so that's syphilis, in 1793. And he says women are less susceptible to the disease than men, and with them it's also less violent in its symptoms and less alarming in its consequences.
Do you think he'd asked a woman?
No. Effectively, in women, it's presenting in some of the same ways. You get discharge, you get pain while you're peeing, you get abdominal pain. So I think a lot of the times the symptoms were just being dismissed as the things that women tend to go through anyway, but they're much worse.
So they're confusing it with vaginal discharge?
Yes, absolutely. And it's really seen, as we see from that quote, it's dismissed as a disease in women, but deep down again, it's causing other problems. So you can get pelvic inflammatory disease, you can get things that are causing a lot of pain. It can also lead to infertility. But as we see, its consequences are minor, according to Benjamin Bell.
So you've talked about it giving rise to infertility. What about if you're pregnant when you get gonorrhea?
Well, if you give birth while you have gonorrhea, you can actually cause conjunctivitis in your baby through the gonorrhea spread from the vagina onto the baby's skin. And for a while in the 20th century, this was a common cause of blindness.
Gosh, so that is as the baby is being born and going through the birth passage?
Yeah.
And it is literally contracting there?
Yeah. In 1880, a German obstetrician called Karl Krede, he had noticed this and realised what the problem was. Every single baby that was born in his clinic would get, again, silver nitrate, eye drops, and that caused the incidence to drop in his clinic from 10% of gonorrheal conjunctivitis to 0.
And that's cool to put that in my eyes?
As I said, once is fine. If you're doing it every single day, you're likely to start to get silver build up in your body.
That's great. Did that treatment spread?
As long as your baby was being born in a clinic where they used this practice, the babies would tend to be fine from this conjunctivitis problem.
Okay. So we know sexually transmitted diseases spread a lot during wars too. Was that true of gonorrhea as well?
Oh, absolutely. Gonorrhea was a massive problem during the wars, which is why they were putting out these fairly abhorrent posters trying to warn men about going with the wrong kind of women. But for some men, it was a way of getting out of the trenches. So if you had gonorrhea, that could get you in hospital for 4 weeks. In fact, sexually transmitted diseases was one of the biggest causes of absence during the war. And obviously, it's not good to have gonorrhea, but a lot of men would see this as better than being in the trenches. And so men who had gonorrhea, who were in hospital, would take matches and dip that in the pus that was coming out of their penis. And these matches with gonorrhea pus would be called gleets themselves. And then they could sell those to someone else to quickly stick up their own penis to try and transfer the disease that way, so that that person could then end up in the hospital and get out of the trenches.
A gleet market.
Yeah.
Did the women get any treatment?
It seems very, very little treatment. We see that with syphilis, that there's more attention paid to what women were going through. But really, when it comes to gonorrhea, all the focus is on men.
But for a woman, could the bladder be blocked as well?
It tended to cause problems with peeing, but not to the same degree. Again, that shorter urethra in women, it causes quite a lot of problems with some other urinary infections, but less likely to get that severe stricture that you get in the male disease.
Oh, okay. So coming back to antibiotics then. Antibiotics come along. Great stuff. Good times. Thank goodness we live in the age of antibiotics.
Absolutely.
However, I read that, like syphilis, gonorrhea is on a rise.
Gonorrhea is on the rise, and we're getting more and more cases of antibiotic resistance.
Why? What's going on?
It's the same with any kind of antibiotic resistance. The way that diseases evolve, they're just managing to get around some of the antibiotics that we use. And so there's one poster I saw recently which said gonorrhea is getting meaner.
So the bacteria has become more intelligent. They know how to get around the antibiotics. But there are some antibiotics that still work.
There are some antibiotics that still work, but there are definitely reported cases of antibiotic resistance gonorrhea that nothing is treating.
How do you prevent it?
The best thing to do is sexual protection, to make sure you're wearing condom, things like that. And if you do suspect that you may have anything, go to the doctor as quickly as you can.
Right. Don't spread the disease.
Don't spread the disease. Don't let it fester.
Talk about it openly. Don't take silver. Kat, thank you so much for joining us today. I have to say, I found that probably one of the most physically uncomfortable podcasts to record.
Should I take that as a compliment?
Absolutely.
Fair enough. Thank you very much, Chanté.
Thank you for listening to Beyond the Knife, a medical history podcast brought to you by Surgeons Hall Museums, Library and Archives. To find out more about us, you can visit www.museum.rcsed.ac.uk. You can also follow us on our social media channels. Join us wherever you get your podcasts.